Welcome everybody to episode 30 of our podcast, where we discuss people that had encounters with Jesus while he was here on earth, and the impact it not only made on their lives, but the lives of the people around them, and still on our lives, the impact that it has made.
Absolutely.
Gerald, this week we're talking about, I think, a person that is well known, not just in Christian circles. There's a lot of people that know about him, but the famous thing is that he washes his hands and says he's not guilty, and this is Pilate.
Yeah, and like you say, history writes about him as well. So there's no denying that there's an historical character here.
Yeah.
But the question needs to be asked, what will history say about him? And like you're suggesting, he was a man that knew what was right. And I was saying it to you beforehand, that he was right, but chose not to be righteous. And I think there's a conversation to have about that in this moment.
So there's a lot happening in this whole story. It's actually it's a long story, and we always just know this little bit about him.
Now, John 18, John 19.
Yeah, the whole thing is about this trial that's going on at the moment. It's basically a follow-up from last week with Caiaphas, and then taking Jesus to Pontius Pilate. And as they arrive there, they're not allowed to enter his house because of the Passover time, and it's seen as unclean. But they don't have a problem sending Jesus there just to go, and because they were Jews and they're not allowed there. He was part of the Roman Empire, very influential man, very clever man, well-educated man.
Politically astute, influential in a big way.
So this is all of him, just basically in a nutshell. He meets Jesus.
Yeah.
And
in fact, he's introduced to Jesus.
He's introduced to Jesus.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, if you read the story, depending on how you read it, I don't know if it was his off day in the beginning. Like, he didn't really seem up for this trial. You know, it was like hey guys, what are you doing here? This guy, you know.
You see, I think, can I say this to you? In fact, a little later on, we hear about Barabbas, who had a reputation for being evil. So this guy, he might not necessarily have encountered Jesus, but I think he knew about Jesus.
Definitely.
Because Jesus says to him a little later on, he says, oh, do you believe that about me, or have your people said that about me? So I've got a funny feeling that he might not have encountered Jesus, but that he'd heard the rumors of Jesus, and somewhere in his own logic, he was basically saying, listen, this guy's doing nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And so, these characters bring him in, the law, again, the people in the law, and they're wanting to justify their law and make sure that their law is kept. And I think, like you're saying, he's having a day where he's saying to himself, you guys are just fools.
Yeah.
This guy's done nothing wrong, but now he needs to be politically correct.
Yeah.
And that's where the continue.
I think, and there's a lot of what we see in our world today, that there's a right and a wrong, good and evil, as we have known it, and there's opinions about people. Unfortunately, I think Jesus was scrutinized because of people's influence on the whole trial. And I think we've seen it even in our world today, where Pilate goes like, this guy's he's not guilty.
Yeah.
You know, he actually admits that Jesus is not guilty. He tells it to the people. Listen, I can't find any fault with this man, but the voices from outside is so loud that it has an influence on the decision he makes.
Yeah. So what's incredible is he actually goes to Jesus, and like you say, I suspect he knows this guy's not guilty. Goes to him, he says, listen, I need to know something. Are you the king of the Jews? He says, oh, well, do you believe that yourself, or has other people told you that? So Jesus is like trying to give him an opportunity to engage in the conversation. I think this is the thing that concerns me, is that he's got an opportunity to really lean in and, for a lack of a better word, defend Christ. Almost have history write him down as the man that defended Christ at the trial, absolutely stood by him, protected him, even made him disappear, if you'd like. You know, so he could have had that history written about him. But he engages in the conversation with him. Jesus says this and that, and he goes on a little later, and you see that he's speaking to Jesus again, and Jesus is revealing himself to him, but he's not ready to hear it. And that I can't explain why. I don't understand why he is not taking the moment to absolutely concentrate on what Jesus is saying. But he turns around and he says, listen, yeah, I want you to know something. I don't think you're guilty. I think that's the kind of conversation he says. And if we could just work this out, and he could see Jesus is not going to respond to this, and then he goes out to the crowd. But interestingly, he first has Jesus flogged. And he goes out to the crowd. He says, listen, I present 2 men to you. And I think, again, there's a lesson in that right now, because I think that's where we've become sometimes somewhat of a compromised generation. We want to give people options. Instead of really standing up for something and saying, listen to me, here's the reality. There are 2 people that are on trial today. One needs to be sentenced. I'm telling you, it's this one over here. This man has done nothing wrong. But he leaves it to the popular debate. And I wonder, who were all the people crying out, crucify him? Was it the people that he'd maybe let down, confronted with their lifestyles? Was it possibly the people that he'd now cast demons out of, and now other people had lost their slaves and servants? You don't know who the people were there. But Jesus is put in a situation, and this man literally sells Jesus down the line, and this is the beginning of the way to the cross.
So there's a part in where Pilate just goes, and with a lot of opinions come, and he actually asks Jesus, what is truth?
Yeah.
What is truth? You know, and I think on that part, the scripture tells us that lean not on your own understanding. And because he was a well-educated man, he understood the workings of what's happening in the world, and asking Jesus what is truth, not taking his opinion of Jesus, really leaning into what Jesus is saying, but making his own decision.
Yeah. What is truth?
Well,
That's
Jesus.
a great question. You know, what is truth? And so you could see that Jesus, you could see that he wants to understand. Jesus speaks to him about that at that moment. But yet, in the background, he's politically asking himself, if I embrace this conversation, if I defend this man, what will it cost me with all the other people?
Yeah.
I think maybe that's something we can almost start to wrap up with, is how we sometimes handle Jesus, or our relationship with Jesus, or our encounter with Jesus, in a careful manner with other people, understanding that it might influence our social being, or our influence, or people's other influences on our lives.
And what you're saying is so true. He is this man. He's got all the power, basically, in that empire at that moment, but still wants the acknowledgement of a crowd outside. You know, wanting their favor rather than, because he's the man with all the influence, but he's influenced by what the crowd outside is saying. Wrapping the story up.
Yeah, you know, I said it to you earlier, and I think that's what I'd love to say to the people that are watching and listening. There's a difference between right and righteousness. This man was right. In fact, if he was sitting here right now, he'd almost look at me and say, well, just wait one moment, Gerald. Let me explain to you the bigger picture. Let me tell you about the meeting I was at the day before. Let me tell you whose son Jesus actually healed. Let me tell you how he possibly broke the law. So there was numerous things that he could have probably argued regarding Jesus and the law, and maybe even had a case for it. But the point was, he was deciding to be right and not righteous. Not in right standing with God, but rather right standing with man. And I just love to encourage everyone that's watching this podcast, encourage yourself, encourage myself. Let's on this journey, this encountering God, let's find ourselves at a place where we are righteous, in right standing with God, instead of just being right. Being right is easy. And when you're right, you can almost make your way away from taking responsibility of a moment where you can bring truth, where you can actually represent truth, even defend truth. But you're only going to do that if you want to know the truth and if you want to sit and stand in righteousness. So my encouragement to you all is, let's seek the righteousness of God and not necessarily the rightness of man.
Yeah, well, there you have it. That was a quite insightful one. I just want to leave you with this thought. I think this was Jesus' trial, tough time, but his life was a testimony to Pilate as well, with the calmness and the peace. So even if we experience tough times, we can still be Christ-like, just like Jesus was in that time. And if you did like this podcast and you were inspired by it, please share it, like our page, follow us, and you get more content from us, and we'll see you again next week. Nothing but love.
Nothing but love, friends.
Let it